Yeah, but Ricky Simone was a real disappointment
Major
last week.
disappointment. Yeah, Mario Batista looked really good. I was really impressed by him. He had a couple of like viral moments in that fight, like when he jumped up to block the leg kick. He checked that leg kick by jumping, and everybody's like, "Oh, new leg kick check unlocked." That was pretty cool. That absolutely ruined my night because I had Bruno Ferreira by knockout, and he slept Phil Hawes. I had Jim Miller by sub.
Well,
And,
hold on. Let's let the pick rundown speak for itself.
yeah.
All right. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I got Tom Nolan taking your pick over Nicole. Lost.
Nope.
Got knocked out. I'm going with Marcus McGee, taking another one of your picks over Gaston Bolaños. I'm going with Matthew Semmelsberger over Preston Parsons and Waldo Cortez Acosta over Andre Arlovsky.
So you're what, 3-2 over the first 5?
I think Matthew Semmelsberger lost. Yeah.
Yeah, the Tom Nolan loss, which is on me because that was my pick. Marcus McGee won. Matthew Semmelsberger lost. Waldo Cortez Acosta won.
Yeah. So it's 2-2. Yeah, on the main card, I'm going with Bruno Ferreira over Phil Hawes, Ricky Simone over Mario Bautista, Jim Miller over Gabriel Benitez, Manel Cape over Mateus Nicolau. That's a tight fight. And I'm going with Magomed Ankalaev over Johnny Walker. What do you got?
So what did that tally to?
Started bad, but what did it all come out to? On the main card, had one loss.
I think you came out to 4-3 because a couple fights got canceled.
Yeah, the Manel Cape. Yeah, that was unfortunate too. I was looking forward to that one. But anyways, that Ricky Simone is what killed my parlay that night. I had a massive one with it had 2 legs from the Chiefs Dolphins game that both hit, and yeah.
Of course
Oh yeah. What are you gonna say?
Of course, it has to be on the last leg too. It's never on like an early leg and then the other ones hit. It's always like that last leg and boom.
Yeah. That ruined my night.
What can you do? What did I do last week? Awesome. I'm doing Tom Nolan over Nicholas Mata. Nope. I'm actually taking Farid Basharat over Farid Basharat. He won, right?
I believe he did, yeah.
1-1. For Taylor Labulas, Marcus McGee over Gaston Bolaños. I'm staying away from the the Jedi fight just because he's so unpredictable, and I am taking Waldo Cortez Acosta over Andre Arlovsky. I think you could probably bet on a finish there too. As far as the main card goes, I'm going Bruno Ferreira over Phil Hawes by finish. Ricky Simone over Mario Bautista. I think he's going to out-grapple him to a victory. Jim Miller over Gabriel Benitez. I think by finish or to go the distance. I'm going to go Mateus Nicolau by decision over Manel Cape and Magomed Ankalaev to get the win. I'm going to say, all right, 6-2.
Yeah.
He's going to finish Johnny Walker. Yeah,
solid. I feel like we knew that was coming too, just because of like Johnny Walker's fight history and Magomed Ankalaev. That was a brutal knockout again. Johnny Walker slept up against the cage. Phil Hawes murdered. Jim Miller went out there and did it. He took a little bit of damage, but I think he's going to fight at UFC 300.
It's a quick turnaround for him, but his whole thing has been fighting at 100, 200, 300, so I can't believe he's going to stop here. So
and the crazy part is, anyone else, I would say, okay, you did UFC 100, 200, 300. Now it's time to retire, but he's still winning.
Yeah, he's actually winning, and they're treating him well. They're treating him the way you would hope you would treat a legend of the game who still has something left in his career, but is not necessarily going to be competing for championships. They're giving him guys who are good challenges for him, but not overmatched or undermatched, where they're pumping him up to be, on a fight win streak when it's against trash cans. They're at the same time not feeding him to up-and-coming contenders that are ruining his legacy. So we can think of guys that are having both done to them right now.
Yeah, absolutely, too. And the other part of that is, not only is he winning, but he's doing it in an entertaining fashion. He's fun on the microphone still. And, it was a late third-round sub. So, he's still bringing, so much to the table outside of just winning as a veteran, too. He's doing his part, and I think that's why they're treating him well, too.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's why I hope they grant him his wish. He got a performance bonus, I think, on Saturday night.
Did he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think him and Marcus McGee, it's dude, you're 40 years old, still collecting those $50K bonuses.
Still looking good. Still going out there against solid competition. Again, they're on the other side of the age scale, but he's still going out there and looking good, fighting well.
Co-main event. Yeah, and then the last thing I want to say,
attracting people, which is number one.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing I want to say about Jim Miller too is I don't know if you saw he had like a little bit of a spat with DC over the weekend as well, where like apparently Daniel Cormier said that Jim Miller does not belong in the Hall of Fame, and he went on Matt Serra's show and he was like, "Yo, if you look at our careers, we started out the same way. We were like 6-2 in the beginning of our careers, and then we finished with the same record." And I think maybe that has to do with Jim Miller, like the lightweight division being more competitive, that Jim Miller probably never hoisted a strap. He didn't really put together like the win streaks that were required, but he does. Right. He has wins over Oliveira. And
he has losses at crucial times.
Yeah.
He has opportunities to ascend, and then he loses just before he hits that like real pivot point.
Right. To guys that maybe he shouldn't have to. But and then the last thing that he said was, and now at this point, I've done 3 of DC's careers, which is crazy, bro. How do you deny the man? You can't. Mm-hmm. Undeniable.
The most wins in UFC history doesn't deserve to be a UFC Hall of Famer. That's an asinine conversation. DC has some ridiculous takes sometimes.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, I think, but I digress.
Fair point. Well, with that being said, let's look forward to the future. UFC 297 this weekend. Let's get into it. It's time. Oh, I know you've been looking forward to this one. Strickland, Plessis, 2 of your favorite fighters. Who are you most looking forward to watching, and who are you pulling for?
Well, the blood's pumping going into this one. I'm having a hard time. I'm not going to lie. Like, I really love both of these guys. Like you said, I have for a long time. Like, if you go back through the history of this show, since Plessis, I think Plessis premiered in the UFC after we started Pickin Fights.
Or at least at around the same time.
Around the same time, at least. But regardless, been a fan of his since he's stepped into the UFC. He's always brought like fun drama to the table, entertaining fights. Same thing with Sean Strickland. These are really 2 like unique styles. I'm not going to go too into it now. We got to talk about it later. But the thing I'm most pumped about is like these are 2 really unique styles for MMA. And 2 wild personalities. You don't know how each guy is going to start. They've come into fights where they've been fast starters and slow starters, and it's worked out both ways for either of these guys. And the styles they're going to clash. It's going to be like some wild shit going on in the octagon. I can't wait for it. So, good card built up around it too. I saw Sean O'Malley talking about how they never build up his cards, and it's because he's a star. And then he was like, well, they didn't build up Sean Strickland's card in Canada. I guess that means he's a star. I don't know if that was like a facetious, sarcastic comment, because this card is pretty built up to me. I'm pretty excited for it. And they have built up Sean O'Malley cards in the past. So,
well, I think now they build up every single card. They don't have a universal champion that can stand on their own. I think like even Volk or Izzy was maybe the biggest draw. And even then, you had other supporting fights that, had to help lift up the card. Right. Also, as you should, right? It shouldn't be a UFC pay-per-view that you're going to charge $90 for, and it's one guy fighting that you're interested in seeing. That's just actually the type of robbery. If you're going to offer a $55 pay-per-view, that's potentially something to get away with when that guy is that popular. But when you have guys who are not anywhere near as popular as Conor McGregor, who are world sensations, number one. Number two, guys who you're now offering a pay-per-view at $90 or $89, $80, whatever it is, something exorbitant.
Right.
And then to combine that with a one fight that's really worth watching, it's just not going to happen. So like if you're going to make it $85, you really got to beef it up. And it still may not even reach over 500,000 buys just because not me, but other people are going to stream it and they're going to find ways. I think you would make more money if you lowered the price and you pumped out the same product, even maybe slightly less. I have 3-4 amazing fights and a couple really good ones littered on like the undercard or the prelims. And you charge $50 for that. I think you get more people to buy for that because they could afford 50 versus 85 for what they're cranking out now, which is what, 5 super cards a year. The other pay-per-views are sometimes headlines by fights that you don't care about, and they're going to sell under 100 pay-per-view buys.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think number one, if they want to increase revenue for like UFC and get people to get in all in on pay-per-views, cut the ESPN shit stuff. Cut the ESPN stuff out. Get rid of the yearly membership. It's so much money on top of like the cost of the pay-per-views as it is. I think they said like, I mean, that's only a fraction of it too if you're paying for all the pay-per-views at the current price point, but that combined with everything else, it's like $1,400 a year if you buy every pay-per-view or something. Mm-hmm. It's a ridiculous amount of money that they want. I pay it. I'm a sucker, but I don't blame people that stream. I don't buy every card either. The cards I don't buy, I don't watch. Or I watch the highlights afterwards. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a scam. It's unfortunate, but as the fan base grows, maybe they'll be incentivized to drop that price point a little bit. How do you feel about these prelims? You want to jump in?
Yeah, let's jump in these prelim notables. Talk about some of the most interesting ones on the prelims. Yeah. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to take the first one?
Yours is earlier in the cards, so I mean, as early as it gets, right?
Yeah. Opening up UFC 297, Malcolm Gordon taking on Jimmy Flick. First of all, this is basically UFC Canada. So I'm always going to slightly lean to the guys who are going to be from the hometown. Malcolm Gordon here, he's had some losses in his career up until this point. Jake Halliday, he's knocked out, armbarred by Mohamed Mokaev. Not terrible losses, honestly. His wins over guys like Denis Bondar and Francisco Figueiredo. He has a loss to Suma Jerji. The people that he's lost to are solid fighters, and I think Jimmy Flick loses to some guys that are not that good. Alessandro Costa, Charles Johnson losing to his wins over Curdy Durden, and these are years and years ago. I think Jimmy Flick, especially the version that we've seen of him as he came back to the UFC, is nowhere near the level of Jimmy Flick that maybe we had once thought he could attain. Malcolm Gordon at this point is just more well-rounded, more active. They're the same age, but he's been in I think he's been in more high caliber fights with higher quality opponents. I think he's well versed in almost every single area. The only area that Jimmy Flick would be better is in like a new style of jiu-jitsu. Not traditional, but kind of more like a 10th planet style. And I think Malcolm Gordon is just far too well versed in MMA to allow that to succeed at this point. So I'm going to take Malcolm Gordon. He's only a minus 130 favorite. I'm going to put we chatted about talking units, and we were going to end up doing that. I don't think we ended up doing it, but I feel very confident on Malcolm Gordon, and especially at minus 130, I think he's going to go out there and get it done in front of the hometown crowd, the home country crowd.
Yeah, I like that pick, and it would be good for him, to get back on track with a win. I don't think I'm going to tail necessarily, just because we've seen Malcolm Gordon, with those on that losing streak. And that can do things to people mentally sometimes. They were losses to good competition. That Mohamed Mokaev one, it just felt like right, like those last two that he had were in England as setup fights, right? So that doesn't make me super confident in him. Tough to come back after two losses, but
you could say the same about Jimmy Flick, who's also on two losses.
Well, that doesn't make me feel better about either one of them then. I like Jimmy Flick too. Like I don't hate him as a fighter. He's another guy we've seen slip a little bit lately. But yeah, I do like the Malcolm Gordon pick. So nice.
Right. What do you got next?
I'm going to go with Charles Jourdain over Sean Woodson. And while I like Sean Woodson, I think that like in his past couple of fights, like that fight against Denis Buzushka, he did show that he can like kind of stand down in the pocket and really like bang with guys and getting close and, be a little bit of like a boxing tactician at times in close range and enjoy those phone booth fights. But Charles Jourdain, like you said, hometown crowd, minus 185 favorite, coming off of a submission guillotine win over Ricardo Ramos. That win against Crone Gracie, which we actually saw live. I don't know if I would really attribute that to a two-fight winning streak, because Crone Gracie brought absolutely nothing to the table and fucking butt scooted around. He had a loss to Shane Burgos, which is a good loss. Nathaniel Wood, tough fight. Lando Venata, submission back then. I think that Charles Jourdain, though, he looked really great in his last fight against Ricardo Ramos. That was really like a resurgence of, who's a guy who's a young tough fighter, great grappler, has stand up to, hang in there with guys. But once he wraps up on people, and gets a limb, his favorite thing to do is choke guys out. Once he grabs a hold of guys' necks, he's really he locks them in there, sinks and chokes. And I think he's just going to be on fire. Yes, he is coming off a 2-fight win streak. Sure, I said I don't Kron Gracie brought nothing, but Charles Jourdain did strike with him and put Kron in that position where he didn't want to hang out there on the feet with him. So, his striking is not half bad either. With all that being said, home crowd, great grappler, good striker. I think he's going to get the win against Sean Woodson this week. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to tend to agree with you. I think Charles Jourdain has improved almost every single time we saw him come into the UFC octagon. He has those 2 fights against, that you talked about, Shane Burgos and the Daniel Wood. Really not bad losses at all. And you look and watch him come back against Kron Gracie, which I don't know if you could take, but Ricardo Ramos, I think, is a good display of what Charles Jourdain could do, especially because he's known a lot for his kickboxing and his speed. To go out there and get a submission victory, I think says a lot about the diversity of his skill set. And Sean Woodson, he is a sniper. He's got those really long arms, 78-inch reach. Here he's having a 10-inch reach advantage, and it looks even longer than that because he's 6'2", but he's all legs with these really lanky arms. He has an extremely weird build. He has virtually no torso, but I don't think that's going to be a problem for Charles Jourdain because he is so well versed in striking. And when it comes to grappling, Sean Woodson leaves a little bit to be desired. With the long arms, you'd think he would have some good jiu-jitsu and he would lock up submissions, which he can do in the past. But I think, for whatever reason, I think the tighter, more compact guy when it comes to jiu-jitsu is going to have a better ability to kind of keep a lower center of gravity and defend takedowns if Sean Woodson comes in there. And I think Charles Jourdain is going to have a better center of gravity for, reversals and things of that nature. So I'm going with Jourdain to get it done over Sean Woodson.
I love it. He's a great fighter. I'm looking forward to this one. You got another one?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Johan Lainez, the White Lion, to get it over Sam Patterson in the future. Another Canadian, home field advantage type pick in Johan Lainez here, 9-2. He is 1-2 over his last 3. Those losses coming to Gabe Green via knockout, Mike Malott via submission. Mike Malott, I'm definitely going to. Again, I keep saying this, that I'm going to allow it, or it's not a bad loss. Any loss you don't want to have, but certainly different losses to different opponents mean different things. And I think a loss to Mike Malott certainly doesn't mean as much as a loss to Yanal Ashmouz that Sam Patterson had his UFC debut. Again, it was UFC debut, but after he got in off the Contender Series, I just saw a lot of holes in Sam Patterson. When you go back and you watch some fights of his, he does leave his chin high up in the air. So I think for a guy like Johan Lainez, who is a kickboxer, who is what I would call, is funny, I would call kind of more of a sniper. We were just talking about Sean Woodson, whose nickname was a sniper. I think of Johan Lainez a little bit like that too. We also have Sam Patterson, 6'3", 78-inch reach, for his 2-inch reach advantage to keep your chin in the air. Johan Lainez, who's going to have a long reach in and of itself, but a little bit shorter, comfortable at the 170-pound weight class, which is going to be a step up for Sam Patterson here. So I think we should see maybe an improved version of him. But to step into the UFC octagon in your first opportunity at a new weight class, I think definitely adds a different level of heat to it. And then you got to imagine he's coming in with a UFC loss on his record. He's going to want to prove himself. He's on UFC 297. Obviously, it's a really big, important card. UFC Canada. Canada's going to be going nuts. They love their fighting, and they love alcohol, for what they can, when they can get out and have a good time. You see the Canadians go nuts. They go nuts for hockey. They go nuts for this as well. So I think Johan Lainez is going to be in his element here. He's the favorite. I think Sam Patterson has a lot to prove, and unfortunately, I think Johan Lainez is going to get this one done. Looking at Tapology, it is about 50-50. So what are you thinking? Break the tie for us.
Yeah, I hope that the Canadian crowd goes crazy like they do. That would be cool. I feel like Canada, all in all, is pretty soft. They may not really turn out for the UFC like that. But, with a card like this, now they have more hometown fighters. We'll see. But, I like Johan Lainez here. Tough spot for Sam Patterson stepping up. I don't know if it's up short notice or not, but it's a tough fight for Sam Patterson. Johan Lainez, strong guy, tough guy, sniper, all that stuff you said. I can't really follow it up much more than by saying I like Johan Lainez here. So I got one more. and that is well, I felt really good about it a second ago, and then I just flipped it in my head just now as I was about to say it. I think I'm actually going to go with Garrett Armfield over Brad Katona. I think I'm going to be very contrarian here. No. I changed my mind. I'm going back on Brad Katona. Brad Katona put on an absolute clinic in his last fight against Cody Gibson. The thing about Garrett Armfield is he comes out of a really good gym. He trains down at Kill Cliff with a lot of killers. Like I think Kamaru Usman's back there. I know he trains with Michael Chandler, and Michael Chandler speaks very highly of Garrett Armfield. And I'm a fan, like Gilbert Burns. I'm a fan of the Kill Cliff gym and Henry Hooft and everything he does down there. But Brad Katona did put an absolute clinic on in his last fight. He's experienced. He's back in the UFC. I think that's the thing that really he really spoke to in his last going against Cody Gibson in that Ultimate Fighter championship fight was just the experience. And Garrett Armfield is young. He's relatively new to the UFC, 2 fights in. First fight was a loss to David Onama. He did knock out Toshiomi Kazama, who I did have Garrett Armfield in that fight. That was Garrett Armfield's first time as UFC favorite, and he won. He knocked out Toshiomi, but that's because Toshiomi doesn't really have a chin. That's the thing that going into this one had me a little bit skewed there, was he did win by knockout when nobody really expected him to. And he does have the ability to surprise people, but you look at the skill set that Brad Katona has, it's just great grappling, great stand-up. Another guy that comes out of another great gym, SPG, even though, their most notable stars haven't really had the best showings lately, like Johnny Walker and Conor McGregor. But other than that, Brad Katona, he's back for a reason. He was booted from the UFC, floated around a little bit, made his way back. And he may be here to stay now, so I think I'm going to go with Brad Katona here. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, listen, I am looking at this and I'm finding a hard way to not be rooting for Brad Katona here. He trains with, he's a grappling heavy guy who trains with Conor McGregor now. Brad Katona. I can just hear him say it every time I read Brad Katona's name. I just hear Brad Katona. Fighting in front of the hometown crowd. Obviously John Kavanaugh, head coach here. He got bopped out of the UFC, but you look at this record and it's shocking. He's got wins over Kyler Phillips and Bryce Mitchell in exhibition MMA on the Ultimate Fighter first go round. Loses to Merab Dvalishvili and Hunter Azure, finds himself out of the UFC and just continues to win. Goes back, beats Timur Valiev of all people on the Ultimate Fighter again. Becomes the only Ultimate Fighter 2-time champion, I believe. Win over Cody Gibson, and now he's fighting Garrett Armfield. I like Brad Katona's chances here. I mean, you said everything you said about Garrett Armfield rings true. I think Brad Katona is just on a little bit of a different level. He's got a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder. The measurables are largely the same. I think Brad Katona, he has a little bit of a reach disadvantage here, but again, I don't think that's going to hurt him when it comes to his game, which is going to be on the ground. With an ever-improving stand-up game, especially being able to mix up that stand-up and the grappling in a way that it makes people concerned about grappling so you can have a more effective stand-up. I really like that approach from Brad Katona. He's got the build for it. He's a minus 180. He's a slight favorite. I like that line for him. I think he just mixes it up a lot better. I think he's got a really interesting, diverse group of people that are at his gym. And you look at Tapology, obviously 91% on Brad Katona. When you have 91% on a guy and he's only a minus 180, I would be inclined to take a good hard look at Garrett Armfield. Make sure I'm not missing anything. But yeah, I think Brad Katona is where the money's at on this one.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have voted this early into the week, but I'm with you. I mean, I don't know, that 91%. Sometimes it's one of those things, right? Like when everybody's like, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow, and then it doesn't rain. Everybody's so certain something's going to happen, and then it almost makes you feel like it's due for it not to happen. That's one of those things with Garrett Armfield here, and I do think he has the ability to surprise people. But I feel really good about Brad Katona here. If it was anyone else, but Brad Katona looked like such a killer in his last fight against Cody Gibson, and that whole way through.
All the money's coming in on Brad Katona.
Yeah, no, it's the smart pick here. I'll tell you, one thing I don't like about Brad Katona is how I felt bad for the guy in the beginning of the Ultimate Fighter this past season when Connor didn't pick the vets. He said, "Give me the young bloods," and Brad Katona just looked like so dejected because that was his guy. And then the whole season he spent it trying to like make it back to Connor, and he finally did. And he was like so overjoyed about it. It was pretty funny, but also like a little cringe at the same time. So yeah, I didn't like him. He was cringe for a bit, but now I like him. You're right. He's driven. He's got a chip on his shoulder. How could you not get behind a story like that? All right, what you got any more?
No, that's it for me. I'd say we get into the main card. I'm pumped for his main card first fight.
Let's do it.
Whoo, baby.
Yeah, kick us off.
Arnold Almighty Allen against Moisar Evloev. Yeah, this is a tough one. If we had not seen Arnold Allen 8 months ago get torn apart by Max Holloway that way, I think I would be more inclined to pick him. We've seen guys go up against Max Holloway and get absolutely destroyed and have lingering effects from that. Arnold Allen, they went back and forth, right? They were both battered and bruised and bloodied up at the end of that fight. It was back and forth, but I think the knock on Arnold Allen is that his high pace that he starts a fight with is really hard to keep over a 5-round fight. The interesting thing is that this is a 3-round fight, right? So he doesn't have to go as long. So he can go with a blistering pace. He also gets hit a ton. So that's really concerning because even though in your earlier fights you can get hit a ton and keep coming through it, as soon as your chin begins to crack, there goes your whole game plan, number one. But number two, when you're against guys who are really snipers and you get up against top-level competition and those punches start hurting every single time, I think that it creates a big problem. And I think Moisar Evloev, 17-0, there's just hardly no knock on him. His only knock is that Diego Lopez fight that we were in attendance for, that he wasn't as dominant as maybe he should have been. But Diego Lopez looks like a natural-born killer. And to take him now, in hindsight, on short notice, and to be able to defend those takedowns, I don't think we're going to see too many. I mean, I think he'll be able to absolutely contend with anything that Arnold Allen would have for him in the grappling department. And when it comes to striking, I think Moisar Evloev was handling everything Diego Lopez had for him when it came to kickboxing. I think definitely he'll be up against a higher output opponent in Arnold Allen, but I like Moisar Evloev to use the fight IQ, the more discipline. I think he's going to be able to use grappling and mixing it up. I have to keep Arnold Allen on the back foot. I think he's going to keep coming forward. Eventually, Moisar Evloev is going to find a takedown and lay some vicious ground and pound on him. So I'm going to go with Moisar Evloev by decision by decision. I think Arnold Allen is still going to have a good chin intact here. And I think it actually is going to be a back and forth fight because I don't know if I made it sound like it was going to be easy, but I think there's definitely going to be a fair bit of standing exchanges. But Moisar Evloev, I would look for him to get the takedown because Arnold Allen is coming on with so much pressure towards him. So I'm going Moisar Evloev to get this one done.
Yeah, it's sad. I don't want to bet against Arnold Allen. He's a guy that I really like. But there's nothing that you can really say against Moisar. Like you said, that he definitely did drop the ball in that Diego Lopez fight. He did everything he possibly could to lose it, besides actually losing the fight. There's a reason why Diego Lopez is one of the most highly touted prospects, and that's because he came out and had a sick performance against Moisar. That shouldn't have happened with a guy coming in on a short notice debut, coming from another country and going to fucking New Jersey. That shouldn't have happened like that. It made me a little bit less confident in Moisar, but again, you really can't you can't knock on anything against him. But Arnold Allen too, sure, he gets hit a lot, and he got pieced up by Max Holloway pretty bad. That was a massive test for him, though. Moisar Evloev is not Max Holloway. Sure, he has the grappling skills, but he's not Max Holloway on the feet. Arnold Allen, we've seen have decent takedown defense in the past. Not great, but decent. I don't know if it's good enough to keep Moisar off of him. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to make a case for Arnold Allen right now, and I'm having a hard time doing it. So I have to go with Moisar. I think I don't know. He's had great performances against really great guys though, like Calvin
Kattar. But hold on. Calvin Kattar, that was a 1-round fight and then he had a knee injury. So that I don't know how much we can look into that. I was just about to say
Yeah, that's true.
We
It was
get
a
into
good
this.
fight until then.
It was a good fight. He got hit. Both guys got hit.
Yeah.
I think some people had Calvin Kattar, or maybe the majority of people had Calvin Kattar. I think upon watching it, I gave that first round to Arnold Allen, maybe just because of pure volume.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, Calvin Kattar, was a knee injury after one round, and you had a win over Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker's been on a slide, and Dan Hooker is willing to engage and doesn't have the chin that he used to. Aside from that, you have Sadiq Youssef by decision and Nick Lentz. He's finished it.
Featherweight. That was featherweight Dan Hooker. That was the one fight that dropped down. Yeah,
exactly.
There's no.
And he just got surged.
It's hard to make a case for Arnold Allen outside of the fact that when guys come off of losses to Max Holloway, sometimes they improve. We've seen that happen with guys like Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega loses a pretty bad fight to Max Holloway, goes on to have a decent championship fight against Volk. I mean, ultimately he got TKO'd, but there were moments in there, I just don't know if there's no evidence for that yet. The evidence is all on Movsar's side, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, I think Movsar is the right decision because I think Arnold Allen, I think was a product of these finishes over two names, but neither of them were really finishes per se because it was featherweight Hooker, who just got swarmed, and it was basically a 1-round finish, and then you had a finish that was attributed to them really didn't or shouldn't have counted, and it's Calvin Kattar. And he goes in there and he loses to Max Holloway. Moisar Evloev is definitely someone more his speed who's going to, be a good challenge for him. But again, I think Moisar Evloev is going to be a little bit better with the fight IQ to be able to, thwart that oncoming offense. But Arnold Allen, again, in a 3-round fight, he can come out with, fast aggression, take the first round, and land a really good shot in the third and win 2-1. So this is absolutely going to be a very close, interesting fight. I'm just going to trust Moisar Evloev 17-0, a little bit more stoic and a little bit more disciplined over a guy who's a little bit more wild.
Yeah, I don't know if I could bet either way on this one, but I'm with you on Movsar. Next one, we got Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. That's how you say his name, right? Mm-hmm. I always screw up his last name. I don't know what's going on with my lights in the house right now. I don't know if you can see that.
They're flickering a little bit.
Yeah.
Still having a storm?
I don't know. It could, it's been snowing nonstop here. But I got Chris Curtis over the local guy in Marc-Andre in this fight. And that's just because Chris Curtis has a chin that Marc-Andre doesn't necessarily have, and the guys that he's knocked out in the past don't really have. And Chris Curtis, he just fires back with another one right away. He's done it against guys he did it against Calvin Gastelum, even though he lost that fight. That was such a tight fight. That was an absolute brawl. And I don't see Marc-Andre Barriault really surviving a brawl like that with Chris Curtis. And Chris Curtis brings it every single time he fights. He's with his boy on this card. I feel like nobody's really overlooking that. Not even Vegas. That's probably why he's minus 165 as opposed to minus 110 or something like that. So yeah, I just don't see Marc-Andre Barriault surviving a Chris Curtis onslaught the way that a guy with a chin like a Kelvin Gastelum could. So for that reason, I'm going with Chris Curtis. He's gonna bring it. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, I am going to have to go with Chris Curtis. I think Marc-Andre Barriault, you made a really good point about him going back and forth with guys and getting knockout wins over guys who don't necessarily have chins, like Chidi Njoku, who we know who can be knocked out. Getting a win over Anthony Fluffy Hernandez via submission. He submitted Jordan Wright, which that I don't give much credit or praise for. Julian Marquez is the guy who goes in there. He's going to swing wildly. He's going to knock you out or get knocked out, and he admits it too. So that's him. Julian Marquez reminds me of Kelsey, Jason Kelsey, just in my head. When I think about them, those two guys are very similar looking in my head. If I held them side to side, they probably don't look right. They probably don't look the same, but in my head, very similar.
They might. They have the same beard.
Yeah. And then he's got a decision win over Eric Anders. Chris Curtis, his losses are to Jack Hermanson, which was back and forth. Jack Hermanson is not bad competition, even though he's not on his peak yet, or not peak yet. He's not in his peak form, but he's still solid competition. He's got that loss to Kevin Gastelum and the no decision against Nasruddin Imavov. But when Chris Curtis is on, Chris Curtis is on. And I don't think he's ever really too afraid to get in there and to scrap. So I think he's going to go in there. He's going to throw hands. He throws power punches. We know that. And he's got a really good chin. He has pretty solid defense. He does take punches from time to time, but I think Marc-Andre Barriault takes a more striking hits. So I think Chris Curtis, the more he lands, he's gonna, be taking less damage and be giving more damage. And I think that he has really solid takedown defense. A guy that trains extensively with Sean Strickland is gonna know how to be in there and take hits if need be. And I think he's I think he's primed and ready to get this one done. He's got the juice behind him. With Sean Strickland being on the card, they're from Las Vegas, so it's not too far. Actually, Toronto, Ontario. How far is that? I think it's just straight up, right? But nevertheless,
I'll be back in a minute, pal. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Hope everything's going on. Everything's all right at Keith's house. He his lights were flickering and then he went off camera and then he ran away in like a panic. So prayers up to Keith. So yeah, long story short, I'm taking Chris Curtis here, and I think he's going to get it done over Marc-Andre Barriault. Looking at Tapology, 81% on him to get the knockout. And I think I would agree with him to get the knockout. Sometimes he is a little bit lackluster, but I think Chris Curtis is going to have what it takes to get it done over Marc-Andre Barriault. Up next on the card, we have Neil Magny taking on the famous Mike Malott. I'm taking proper Mike Malott. He has came into the UFC and basically done everything that you would hope for him to do, especially lately with the submission win over Johan Lines. He's got another submission by guillotine over Adam Fugit that happened just 6 months ago, capitalizing on the momentum. I think Mike Malott is primed and ready to turn into a proper superstar here in front of Canada. He's the hometown guy. He's been always repping Canada. He's, when he was making like kind of his return, because he had a bit of a layoff, everyone was talking about how Mike Malott at his gym, he was both the jiu-jitsu instructor and the kickboxing instructor, and what that would mean for a professional UFC fighter to be, of such a high level at both things. So I think Mike Malott coming into the UFC had a lot of high expectations, and so far he's been a really exciting fighter, and he's lived up to those expectations. Neil Magny is a little bit up and down throughout his entire career. 36 years old, so definitely kind of on the latter end of his career. He's going to have the height advantage here and the reach advantage, which is something Neil Magny is used to time in and time again. He is 2-3 over his last 5 with a loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov, Gilbert Burns, and Ian Machado Gary over unanimous decision, which he just got downright beaten to a pulp on 4 months ago. It's a quick turnaround time for him. His wins over are Phil Rowe, which we just saw Phil Rowe get knocked out last week, and D-Rod, who he Darce-choked D-Rod, which at the time was really good, but we've seen D-Rod be on a bit of a slide. So unfortunately for Neil Magny, I think Mike Malott is going to be a lot better at what Neil Magny is not, and that's going to be grappling. I think you're going to see Mike Malott work his kickboxing, work to the body, and eventually get in, take down Neil Magny, get on his back somehow, and either choke him out or get into an arm bar or a head and arm triangle, some sort of submission. I think Mike Malott is going to far outclass Neil Magny on the ground. And I think when it comes to on the feet, Neil Magny is just not active enough. I think he just kind of will stand there and try to use his reach to get the advantage. He's not a killer. He's not going to go out there and get those finishes, at least not too much anymore. So I'm going with Mike Malott to get this one done. Hey, look who's back. How's everything going? Is the house all right?
Yeah, everything is good. Thank you. Thank you for the prayer, everybody. It was just like the light was flickering, and then when I Googled it, it said that it was like a circuit box like overload or something. So I ran downstairs to go check that real quick and be like, my house isn't gonna burn down, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, no, I don't know what it is. So we'll figure it out afterwards. But
probably more important to get this done than worry about your house being on fire.
Nah, there's no smoke. No, I don't think it's that serious. Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. I heard a little bit of what you said. I like Mike Malott in this fight a lot. They just put him in UFC 5 or 4, whatever the new video game is. Yeah, he's cool. I like him. Canadian home crowd, strong hands, good submission game. Trains at a good gym. Trains a lot of good guys. So yeah, there's a lot I like about Mike Milan. I think he's going to get it done. Neil Magny is a great fighter. He was supposed to fight Ian Gary, right?
Mike Malott.
No, Neil Magny.
He did fight Neil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did fight him. That was, remember, he's having all the he
Right.
was Ian Gary was saying that he was a child beater.
Yeah. I always get him and Jeff Neal mixed up. Like I feel like those two Neals are somewhat interchangeable. They fight a lot of the same guys in the division and have similar outcomes. So then forget the point that I was going to make about that. But yeah, I still like Mike Malott. I like Malott here a lot. So Mike Malott.
You like Malott a lot?
Yeah. What's his nickname again?
Proper.
Oh, I was hoping it would be like Hammer Malott. I don't know, Mallet. I don't know, whatever. We got Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. And one thing I have to say about Raquel Pennington, during the time when Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were going through like their court cases, I was working nights at that point. So then I'd get home from work in the morning, and if there was nothing on TV, I'd throw on the court case until I fell asleep. And Raquel Pennington came up so much in that because she's best friends with Amber Heard. And
different Raquel Pennington, though.
Huh?
It's a different Raquel Pennington.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
No way. They always said Rocky. Like they always called her Rocky. And
different.
I have to Google this now.
I'm like 80% sure she's different.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, wow. Huh. That's interesting. Wow, and this whole time I've been going, is it? Wow, all right. Yeah,
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Well, the point's the same. I still cannot hear Raquel Pennington
without thinking
about Amber Heard taking a poop on Johnny Depp's pillow and then blaming it on her. I still can't get over that. And then like that, Raquel Pennington got involved and like got sent a picture and had to testify and be like, no, that is dog poop. And just I guess I don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah, ridiculous. But I am. Well, that invalidates it. I was going to go with Raquel Pennington because maybe she took like fighting lessons from Amber Heard. Because she was like beating up Johnny Depp all the time. The thing about Raquel Pennington is she had so much hype and then kind of slowed down a little bit, like started taking gaps off in between fights. Mayra Bueno Silva, why did they disqualify her win against Holly Holm?
I think she popped.
Mayra Bueno Silva? Yikes. Yeah, she had to have then. That's a weird one. I don't know. I mean, she's strung together a decent like chunk of wins. Mayra Bueno Silva, her submission game is really what's gotten her to where she is. Like, yeah, she had that submission standing ninja choke over Holly Holm. That was wild. She made Holly Holm look totally inept when it came to jiu-jitsu. But she's also on steroids. And while that doesn't like totally invalidate that or pop for something, it's like
hold the phone.
Yeah, what was that?
Psychostimulant drugs, methylphenidate. I don't know steroids as much of it. I'm seeing a lot of methyl.
Methyl?
Dexamethyl. Oh, Ritalin. Oh, it was Ritalin. I didn't even look at the freaking name. It's Ritalin. So ADHD medication. So what
Yo, you know what though? That's supposed to be out of your system so fast. If it wasn't prescribed to her, I wonder if she was using it to like cut weight or something.
Maybe. I wonder. But I mean, I don't know if she was using it to, to say that and like steroids wouldn't be accurate, right? So like I think that's important. Tested positive for Ritalin is different.
I mean, listen, let's say like Ritalin, it does have the same chemical composition as meth. So
that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing a lot of methyls.
Yeah, so there's a chance that she was like methed out essentially for her fight against Holly Holm. I don't know, or training, whatever. Well, she would have had to have popped after the fact, so I don't know, just sus. But for her grappling skills, I really like her. She's a finisher. Raquel Pennington had like a lackluster performance against Aspen Ladd, who really didn't have a great tenure in the UFC. Macy Chasson, okay. You should be submitting her. And then a couple of no names, Marion Renwo and Myra Buena Silva's just, she's been finishing people lately. Her last 3 fights ended in finish, and I think, unless like the Ritalin had a massive impact on her, or they're going to be testing her piss in the middle of the night and messing with her weight cut, I think that she's going to go out there and finish Raquel Pennington in a 5-round fight. Like Myra Buena Silva has like a decent gas tank and has the ability to just she's a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. As soon as you make a mistake, she's grabbing onto something. And Raquel Pennington is going to have to be so on point if she goes to the ground with Myra Buena Silva. And the inactivity difference speaks a lot to that. Like, there's a thing as ring rust, and while it hasn't been super long that she's been out, it's been, a year. And that was against Kelvin Vieira. So I got Myra Buena Silva. What do you got, Tom?
For the same reasons, it's been a year. She's 35 years old versus Myra Buena Silva is 32. She has been, more active. And in, her most recent fight against Ketlin Vieira, yeah, she looked good, but Ketlin Vieira, they all have wins against, Aspen Ladd and Penny Kaniziad, who are not necessarily, top echelon fighters. I think Myra Buena Silva would run through that type of opponent. And you see decision wins against those type of opponents for Raquel Pennington. So I think the caliber of grappling and just the overall level in which they fight with, the intensity level, I think Myra Buena Silva goes out there and she brings it, whereas Raquel Pennington is a little bit on the back foot, a little bit waits for the opponent to make the first move and is very reactionary. And I think that's a terrible approach against Myra Buena Silva, someone who goes in there and, she's 32 years old, but she's strong. She has a much stronger physique, much more powerful. So I think when it comes to grappling, getting onto the ground, and having some of those exchanges down there, I like Myra Buena Silva all day to get this one done, even at minus 170. I'm on MBS.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like that MBS. That's a good one. Yeah, you can't go out there looking to start slow against a girl like her. And then the main event. And I don't know how either one of these guys are going to start. I don't know what to expect from this really at all, honestly. You go first. I was going to say something. Now I lost my train of thought because it's just there's so much going on here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. This is going to be like a live deciphering of what I think.
That's what I was about to do, and I didn't want to listen to myself ramble.
Honestly, I think, and this might be boring. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to go out there and I think he's going to put on a show. Now we've seen Sean Strickland get emotional for like the first time in his career. So I don't know what that's going to end up leading to. We see him have abs now. He's probably training like a madman. We know he gets hit the least amount of anybody in the UFC. He wore that special mouthpiece. Now that could be skewed against, who is he fighting? What type of guys is he fighting? How often is he fighting? Nevertheless, if you take it at face value, I think there's a lot that goes into the fact that Sean Strickland doesn't get hit. I think also Sean Strickland is a product of how he fights. If he's going to be on the back foot, if he's going to be tentative for 2, 3, 4 rounds, he's going to lose the fight. Whenever he gets hit, though, he is a little bit like Tarzan. When he sees his own blood, he goes nuts. So I think for Strickland, when he starts to get hit, I think that's when he's really, really going to wake up. Again, we're starting to see him a little bit emotional. I don't know if that's going to fight emotional and how that's going to impact. It's a total wild card. And you see Dricus du Plessis, who we see him go out there and manhandle people. I think I had read something about Dricus, that he had some grappling bouts and went out there and just submitted some really important grappling people. Of course, I can't find it now, so I really can't rely on it. But this is a guy who's went out there and he, demolished Robert Whitaker in less than 2 rounds. Demolished Darren Till. Granted, it wasn't a great Darren Till. They did have a little bit of a back and forth second round where Darren Till was beginning to win on Dricus du Plessis, but the Dricus from, even December of 2022 until now January of 2024, 13 months, I think we've seen him improve a lot. A little bit of that could have been because he's not having to breathe through his mouth so extensively. He's got that nasal surgery done. He also just has a very strong physique. He throws wild punches. He's almost the antithesis to Sean Strickland. He's wild in the cage. He throws wild punches. He throws with a lot of power. And we used to see him get tired, not as much anymore. Sean Strickland, never see him get even remotely gassed, never gets hit, doesn't throw a lot either, throws maybe the 1s and 2s, very reserved 1s, 2s down the pipe, maybe a couple hooks, throws some teep jabs. If Sean Strickland is on his back foot, I don't think he can get anything on because it's really hard to from his position, throw those jabs, move backwards, land effectively. And I think Dricus du Plessis is going to come out him like a freaking madman. And I think Dricus du Plessis is probably going to win the first couple of rounds. And you see Sean Strickland start to come on, maybe as Dricus begins to fade a little bit from such a relentless pressure. I think you're going to see I think Sean Strickland is going to take a lot of damage to his arms because he's blocking so much. And I think ultimately, as the fight goes on, I think that maybe could make him a little bit slower because he's taking so much damage to the arms because Dricus du Plessis is firing so much. So I think that could render him a little bit more challenging. But I think you have a strong likelihood that Sean Strickland could take maybe the 4th or the 5th round if this is where it's going to go. I'm really torn, but I think there's more of a variety in ways that Dricus du Plessis can win versus Sean Strickland. I don't think after the surgery we've seen him have really any bit of gas tank issue, but we're not going to see that out of Sean Strickland either. So if anything, that's a draw, maybe a slight edge to Sean. Sean is not very active in the early rounds, whereas Dricus is. So I think we're going to see, that has to be point Dricus. And then if you start to talk about grappling, yeah, Sean has great takedown defense, and he talks about how he's really good at grappling. And other people talk about he's good at grappling, and we just don't see it. Maybe we'll see it here. I think we could definitely see Dricus in like the 3rd or 4th round. As he gets tired, start to shoot for takedowns. Sean block those takedowns, land a fire, a 1-2 right down the pipe, and we start to see maybe Dricus revert back to that open mouth breathing policy. I think it's going to be really close, and if I had to pinpoint, I think it's probably going to come down to the 3rd. I think you're going to see Dricus take the first 2. I think you're probably going to see Sean take 4 and 5. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a, 48-47 split decision victory for Dricus du Plessis.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot. There's a few things that I disagree with, though. I think when it comes to numero uno with Strickland taking damage, I was watching that video, and obviously it's just like a cheesy little funny video, but the one where he's training that girl Nina on how to do the Philly shell, he does it perfectly. He's perfected it. It's perfect boxing defense, and I mean we've seen him employ it time and time again. And against a guy like Dricus, who throws a lot of wild stuff, a lot of over-the-top stuff. Sean is so good at just rolling with the shoulder and with the jab and just letting those pass by, and occasionally they're throwing up. And when they're coming that way, he's just so good with his defense. The only time that we saw him unsuccessful with his defense was when he went out there against Alex, and I think he went out scared against Alex and was like walking him down like this. And that's the only time we've ever seen him not, and it's because he was afraid of Alex, I think. Then also, when it comes to Sean being angry and emotional, he's always been angry and emotional, right? Not like this. But if he's just doing more of what he's doing, I don't see how that could be a problem for him. Like, yeah, he's coming in with abs, but Sean Strickland's already a guy that overtrained. He's already a guy that gets hit in the face, or not hit in the face, but he goes full go sparring and it manages to avoid just about everything. And statistically, he gets hit the least and hits guys the most. Everybody that he's trained with has ever said it. He just had Johnny Eblin in there from Bellator, and he said the same thing. Great sparring partner. It's and then I when it comes to gas tank, we haven't seen Dricus go past round 2 where he hasn't looked like he's going to die. When he was fighting Darren Till, that went into round 3, I think, but both of them just looked like they were going to die. And the nose, I can't hear you, you're muted, but I know what you're saying. And you look at the Brad Tavares fight too, and when it comes to takedowns and a grappling advantage that some people are saying that Dricus du Plessis has, Dricus tried to wrestle with Brad Tavares and tried to hip toss him at the fence and stuff like that. And more often than not ended up on his own back while going for takedowns. And Sean Strickland, all we've ever heard about is that he's a great wrestler. He's just never employed it. He's literally never employed it. Could have against Izzy, went out there and did it with his hands. And, I think that he's going to be – sure, he might be angry. It's not going to make him stronger. He's not a finisher. But I don't see him getting finished by Dricus in this fight, and give it round 3, 4, 5. I think he starts to take over and just really just land that 1-2. Dricus is susceptible to a lot of stuff coming low up the middle, so that push kick that Sean Strickland uses a lot is going to be very effective against Dricus. You're not going to see Sean Strickland do anything outside of what he normally does. You might see Dricus go in there and do something crazy, and that's where the X factor truly is in this fight. is like he could finish Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's been finished. Like Dricus is really the X factor, but I think given the circumstances and who Sean Strickland is, and it's tough though because Dricus might very well win this fight, but I would like to see Sean Strickland win it, and I think he has the ability to get it done. It's just so hard to pick this one, bro.
I think we had a very similar breakdown. We just disagreed on maybe where round 3 will go, because you said that Drake is going to start fast. You said that over time he's going to fade. His wrestling is not going to be there. Sean Strickland's a good wrestler. Sean Strickland is going to have the cardio to go 5 rounds. Sean Strickland starts to take over in 4 and 5. It really just depends on where 3 is going to go.
It's whether or not he finishes Sean early. Like that's because if he lets Sean go out there and fight his fight, it's a 5-round decision victory. And that's even if he only goes out there and gets crazy for like 1 or 2 rounds. He could still get up the fight. Like I really do think that Dricus has to finish Sean in order to win this fight. I think that if the roles are reversed, I don't think that there's a chance in like a snowball's chance in hell that Dricus wins a decision against Sean Strickland. There's no way.
I mean, I don't. I mean,
we did say that again about Sean with Izzy, though. Remember, we did say that exact same thing. But I'm sorry. I just wanted to point that out before we kept going.
No, I mean, it's a good point. It's a good point that, you would think that if it's going to go to a decision, that's Sean Strickland all day but again, I'm not willing to totally let go of the fact that DDP has had a much improved cardio state, or at least looked like he was. We haven't seen it really tested, to be fair, but it's easy to conceptualize that it would be perceived better cardio if you can actually breathe through your nose versus not being able to. So I don't want to remove that as a potential factor in this fight, especially when we're talking about those remaining rounds, 3, 4, 5. And also, you gotta factor in how tired does DDP get. If he, we've seen him fight tired, and that's when he got better. So if he's not getting to that point, and now he's staying in that, like, I think we're still finding out who DD was that.
Fight or flight, right? Like he's running out. And all of a sudden,
all of a sudden he's good, so maybe he takes the first, second, loses the third, loses the fourth, and wins the fifth because he's, he just puts it on. I really don't know. It's going to be a really, really interesting fight. I think he has a little bit more variety. He has a little bit more X factor. And I think, if he has a little bit more of that cardio, the third round, he can take predominantly a little bit more of it on. I think to your credit, I don't know if, not to your credit, to your point, I don't know if we're going to see DDP take down Sean Strickland.
Right.
But
there is that old adage, too, that fighters get 30% better overnight when they become the champs. And this is Sean Strickland's first title defense. And we have almost literally seen that with, like, almost every UFC champion that, like, their first defense, they look fucking stellar. I mean, look at Aljo, dude. Aljo gets dominated by Petr Yan. What does he do? The next fight around, he wins a pretty decent decision against Petr Yan. There's, like, that I don't know. That could be a factor here too. Everybody wants to train with Sean Strickland right now. Everybody wants to get in there in the gym with him. It's the mental stuff that worries me more about him than anything. But I think when it comes to fighters, I think that 75% of the time, if you put these fucking cat, bro. Anyways, yeah, I got Sean Strickland like 7 times out of 10, so I'm going to go with him on Saturday.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's go into our pick rundown real quick. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, you first.
Okay. Prelim notables. I'm going with Johan Linus over Sam Patterson. Stealing your pick there. Charles Jourdain over Sean Woodson. Brad Katona over Garrett Armfield. And then for the main card, I'm going with Movsar Evloev over Arnold Allen Allen, even though I'd like to go with Arnold Allen. I just can't bring myself to do it. Chris Curtis over Marc-Andre Barriot. Mike Malott over Neil Magny. Myra Bueno Silva over Amber Heard's maybe best friend, maybe not, Raquel Pennington. And I'm going to go with Sean Strickland, the middleweight champion of the world. I plan on hearing Ann New on Saturday night. But like you said before we
plan on hearing Ann New or Ann Still?
Ann Still, yikes. But like you said at the start of that, if we did hear Ann New, I wouldn't be too upset. So what do you got, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going with Malcolm Gordon over Jimmy Flick. I'm going with Johan Liness over Sam Patterson. No, I'm gonna stay away from it. Women's MMA is just too unpredictable to mention in the prelim notables. Charles Air Jordan over Sean Woodson, and hell, give me Brad Katona over Garrett Armfield. That's Brad Katona. Main card picks. Movsar Evloev over Arnold Allen. I thought it used to be Arnold Billy Allen. Never mind. We'll do Chris Curtis over Marc-Andre Barriol. Mike Malott, proper Mike Malott over Neil Magny. I like him a lot. MBS, Myra Bueno Silva, I think gets it done over Rocky Pennington. And I'm going to go with DDP in a 3-2, 48-47 victory over Sean Strickland.
You really think he's going to win a decision over Sean Strickland?
I don't think he's going to finish Sean Strickland, and I do think he's going to win.
I don't know. I think if he was to win this, it would be more likely for it to be by knockout. But
no, I mean, I think to your point, I think that Sean Strickland got knocked out because he was a little bit timid. And I think he also was a little bit reckless in that fight. And he mentioned he would keep his right hand up. And ever since he has kept his right hand up, he's trained with Alex Pereira more. So I think he's less likely to get knocked out now. Yeah. Especially because he gets hit so infrequently.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to bring something up real quick. We have our friend Tom Manzanero. Sup, guys? When you have a minute, I'd like your pick on Poirier BSD. Please keep up the good work. Thank you, Thomas. I hope you're still with us. That was way back at the beginning of the episode. I will give my preemptive pick. I'm having a hard time with this one. It's a little far out still. But I see a lot of people going with Benoit Saint-Denis, and that makes me want to take Dustin Poirier in this matchup. I know he's coming off of a knockout, and Benoit Saint-Denis is super duper powerful. But Dustin Poirier is still him. Dustin Poirier is great. Yeah, he slipped up against Charles. Yeah, he slipped up against Justin. But Benoit Saint-Denis is going to have to crack him with something over the head. He very well could. But, we'll see how we're feeling as we get closer to it. You got anything you want to say about that one before we –
Yeah. Benoit Saint-Denis. I remember at a time being a little bit concerned about where he was going to go because I think he got – I want to say he got beaten so very badly. Like, he got just a lot of damage taken. I think, it was this fight here versus Elijah Zaleski. He got a unanimous decision loss, and he just got beaten to a pulp where I think it was in the second round. It should have been finished and stopped, and it just never was. And I think that was his first entrance into the UFC. And you're like, oh my God, I feel bad for this guy. But then he comes back against Nicholas Stolze. He gets a rear naked choke finish. Then he starts knocking out all of these finishes. He goes all the way up, finishes Ismael Bonfim, gets the first win over one of the Bonfim brothers, Thiago Moises. Matt Frivola knocked him out by a head kick. Matt Frivola, the steamroller, everyone was on his bandwagon, right? Matt Frivola, he's a guy who freaking knocked out Drew Dober. So Benoit Saint-Denis, talk about meteoric rise, a guy who was from, I think he's former French military, like scary, like a beret type of dude.
Yeah, he's a scary guy.
Scary guy, military mindset, military background. He has power in his hands, learning the game of MMA. The other scary thing about him is that it's not like he's been doing MMA his entire life. He picked up MMA fairly recently. I want to say, when did he make his pro debut? In 13-1, 5 wins. It doesn't say when he made his pro debut.
Go to the first fight at the bottom.
Just go all the way down.
Yeah.
2019 was his pro debut.
Right before COVID.
Right before COVID. He fought all through. He's only been fighting before COVID. He had 2019 February, so he had a year before COVID. And now he's fighting Dustin Poirier with knockouts over Matt Frivola, with knockout wins over Thiago Moises. Like, this guy, 5-1 in the UFC, 4-0 and 1-0 contest in Brave. I mean, this guy is the freaking truth. He's only getting better. He's got fast hands, powerful hands. He's got the ability to finish you on the ground. He's got a killer's mindset. And Dustin Poirier is coming off the first loss of his career. The first thing to go is speed. After your chin begins to go, and he responded to that knockout, both in terms of training, when you can get back into training, where it's like doing everything again, not thinking about that, moving forward. Is that his first, total like knockout KO of his career?
I don't think so. I think Conor knocked him out back in the day.
He's only been knocked out 3 times, and I think that was his only time being like head kick knocked out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I think there's something Michael Johnson to punches and Connor to punches, So when you talk about like being knocked out, being finished, it's like, oh yeah, like he was, out.
Yeah.
So against the guy, I honestly, and I would say this, I say Benoit Saint Denis is a better version of Justin Gaethje. I think he's less crazy. He has the hands. He's got a grappling game that he's willing to use. He's got a crazy mentality. And he's more, with the military background, he's going to be disciplined. Give me BSD.
He's scary. I picked Dustin, like I said at the beginning, to be like a little bit contrarian because everybody is on BSD right now, which like the thing about Dustin is we have seen him drop in the rankings to fight guys in the past. He normally doesn't. Dustin's a guy that normally only fights up. He's up at the top right now. There's really no opportunity for him to fight up at the moment. So he's dropping in the rankings to fight Benoit Saint Denis. The other thing I like about this is that Dustin said he would only fight somebody that scares him. He only wants a fight that gets his juices flowing or whatever. And so that's why I think a lot of the fans are on board with Benoit Saint Denis because that's a guy that scares everybody. I like him a lot. But Dustin Poirier, the last time I remember him dropping down in rankings to give a contender a shot at him was Dan Hooker. That's the last time I really remember that, where it was like that significant of a drop. And I mean, look what he did to him.
This was a bad one.
He sent Dan Hooker to the hospital, like not like a regular hospital visit, like we're worried about him. So you can't forget who Dustin is too.
Right, but again, Dustin has since then we haven't seen a great Dan Hooker. Like look at this. Okay, he's got his win over Max Holloway at 155 back in 2019 when Benoit Saint Denis started his career. Since then, he lost to Khabib.
Forgivable.
Then he beat Dan Hooker. Then he beat Conor McGregor in his first fight back in a boxing stance, who wasn't really training that hard. Yeah. And then he beat Conor McGregor, whose leg snapped after one round. And then he lost to Charles. Then he beat Michael Chandler. Everyone beats Michael Chandler nowadays. Sorry. Not everybody, but like the good ones, the top 5 do. Wow. And then Justin Gaethje, he loses to him. Who's a great win here?
I think that he put on a great performance against Oliveira until he didn't. And yeah, you said a great win. I think Michael Chandler was still a great win. Michael Chandler should have won that fight up until he didn't, up until Dustin Poirier choked him out. That was a good showing of Dustin Poirier's jiu-jitsu. So there you go. That was a good win for Dustin Poirier.
Doesn't really have the juice behind it other than Benoit Saint Denis coming in there, head kick, knocking out Matt Frivola.
He's got stupid power. It's just like I'm just surprised to see that everybody is like so off Dustin Poirier so fast. I understand like Benoit.
I mean, but look at the record, man. Like, I mean, the thing is like it's. I think Dustin Poirier has this reputation that's better than who he is because he's beating guys with names, but like he's fighting guys with names is what it is. He fought Charles Oliveira, ultimately lost, but that's a good loss. He looked good, and he beat Michael Chandler, but he almost didn't though. He almost didn't, and he fought back. So that was really good. And, he did look good against Gaethje, but, Gaethje kicked him, but like he did look good in that one also. Like, it's just, I think a lot of people give Dustin more credit than he deserves because he's got a name, because he's been around, and because he's a fake nice guy.
Why has he been around, though? He's not just around for no reason. He's around because he's a great fighter. Like, there's no denying that Dustin Poirier, like, you can't shit on his resume, really. He's had some sick
Yes, you can.
I don't know.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing right now is like for him to be in the top 5 and to be like, he lost to Khabib. He beat Dan Hooker, who can't find a weight class. He beat McGregor, who people are out on and who hadn't fought in a long time. Lost to a top 5 guy, beat a guy outside the top 5, and then lost to a top 5 guy. Like, he's not top 5.
That Dan Hooker win, that was Dan Hooker when Dan was the hangman. That was during COVID when they were both on just ripping through everybody. They went to a 5-round brawl. Look at the fights that he had during that time period.
Paul Felder, Al Iaquinta, and James Vick.
Yeah, that was before that. Still, Dan Hooker at one time was great. Not like championship level great. Great fight.
He was a great fight. He was a great guy to watch fight.
Yeah, Okay, still had great competitions, great fights throughout the years, skidding, whatever. You wouldn't say that Tony Ferguson was like all bad at one time.
No, Tony Ferguson was really good and was enjoyable to watch fight. He would fight top five guys and make them look stupid.
We're just
You
like
know,
arguing
I,
semantics
it,
for
it
some reason. The point. The fact of the matter is, Dustin Poirier is one of the all-time greats. He's been an interim champion. All right, he's beat Max Holloway. That's a great win. Khabib and Charles Oliveira are so forgivable. Those are two of the greatest lightweights of all time, bro. And he got choked out by them in their field, right?
that's fine. But what I'm saying,
everybody thinks that Benoit Saint Denis is just going to go in there and steamroll him. I don't see that being the case.
no, I don't think he's going to go in there and steamroll him, but I also don't think that Dustin Poirier is at the top level of his. Like, I think when you think about Dustin Poirier, you got to remember that you think about Dustin Poirier now, and you can't forget that his last most recent fights and his wins that hang his hat on that's keeping him in the top five are against Conor McGregor, who's not ranked, and it's two fights, one where he broke his leg after the first round, and the other one that was first fight back in a couple years. So that can't be held in high regard. Dan Hooker, who was always a guy in the middle of the division, not toward the top five or contending for a championship, and Michael Chandler, a guy who really never really was contending for a championship, was only in the UFC at the end of his career and is more of an exciting fighter than a championship level fighter. His losses are to guys who are championship level, Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, exactly. He's only losing to championship guys. We don't know if
right,
Benoit is level yet.
We don't, but he sure had the makings of it. He's going in there and he's finishing guys. So to say that, you know that Poirier's not championship level at this point in his career, and Benoit Saint Denis is on the rise. It's a good matchup. It's going to be a tight fight. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, don't think that because his name is Dustin Poirier that we're going to see the Dustin Poirier that competed with Max Holloway.
No, I'm not saying that. It's just
like it's a.
I mean, to not just be like, oh, Dustin Poirier is Dustin Poirier. No, I've watched all of his fights. I know who he is, and I look at the skill set, the boxing that he brings to the table, the jiu-jitsu. As long as Benoit Saint Denis doesn't find a way to wrap up his neck, I see Dustin Poirier outboxing him. He's going to eat some fucking womps. He's going to get womped by Benoit Saint Denis a couple of times because that's what he does. But he's going to have those moments in this fight where he gets womped once or twice. He pulls up his shorts, backs down Benoit Saint Denis, 5-round fight. Benoit Saint Denis has only been fighting since 2019. There's a lot of stuff going on here that, like, I feel like everybody's just like, yeah, he's going to whomp him and he's got good submission game. Dustin Poirier has a lot of the intangibles. He's got experience. He went down to a head kick, bro. He got a baseball bat against the side of his temple. If he doesn't catch that, if he doesn't get that from fucking, he's still great, bro. He's still great. Is he the guy?
Good point. You swayed me. Talking about his boxing, slipping under a punch. He's only been fighting since 2019. Slip under punch, 1-2, leg kick, back out, right hand. Like, I can see him taking one.
Bro, yeah. You know what got knocked out by Justin Gaethje? Who would have ever in a million years seen a head kick coming from that fucking guy? Right? Like, you're not that's the best thing, If that was straight boxing, he beats everybody in the UFC, I think. I think he his boxing is incredible, and then whatever. That I used to hate Dustin Poirier too, and now you're making me argue in his favor. What the fuck, man?
Listen, you swayed me. You made a great point. His boxing is still there. Just because he had the head kick knockout from Justin Gaethje, it doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to go in there and box up Benoit Saint Denis. And like you said, he has the experience, 5-round competition. You painted a perfect picture of him getting whomped, stepping back, picking up his shorts, be like, all right, let's fight. And making something out of it. I think it's gonna be a really good scrap. I'm freaking pumped for it. I'm glad that he's willing to, finally fight outside of the top 5. And I think, I think also, like, we made a good case here that, like, Dustin Poirier is not going to fight for a title again, but it doesn't mean that he's washed, and it doesn't mean that he's not going to put on great fights.
We'll see. I mean, he's old, but I wouldn't speak too soon that he might never fight for a belt again. Stranger things have happened.
I think we're going to see a speed difference in Poirier versus Benoit. I think we're going to see a real speed difference, and I think that slow is fast or slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I think that only goes so far. I think when you have a guy who's going to be fast and throw bombs at you, I think you're going to get hit and rattled a lot more, which is going to impact your speed and your footwork more, make you more susceptible to getting hit. So I think, even though Dustin Poirier is really good and good for his age, I think he could still get fucking mollywopped by a guy who's 28 years old and on his ascend versus a guy who's on his descend. And I think that's what's going to make this so intriguing. Because what happens if Benoit Saint Denis goes in there? Maybe he loses, but it's a banger. That doesn't tell me that, Dustin Poirier is ready to fight Islam Makhachev again.
No.
So, Dustin Poirier's got another 3 fights before he could fight for the belt again.
It tells you that Benoit Saint Denis is ready for a step up. Yeah, it's a stalemate, right? It's the first time he's dropping a competition. He said he was looking for a fight that scared him. This is a scary-ass fight for, anybody. So I respect the hell out of Dustin Poirier. The main reason I'm even arguing for him, too, is because I've never seen everybody just turn on a fighter all at once the way that they have with Dustin Poirier. And it's I'm just arguing for him because everybody's so in on Benoit Saint Denis. It's do we forget who this guy is? Mm-hmm. He's given us some of the most memorable moments in the sport. So,
defend his honor, Keith.
Well, what does Kobe say? 25 minutes, hard work, paid in full. Poirier.
Hard work, paid in full.
Paid in full. But, that's all I got about that. So thanks, Thomas Manzanero, for making us go another 20 minutes talking about a fight that's not for another few weeks. Nah, just kidding. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else that's watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. I love answering questions. I appreciate DP saying prayers up Keith before. That was cool. Everything is fine. Follow us on X and Instagram @_PickinWinners, Pickin Fights @PickinFightsTom, @PickinKeith on Twitter. Stay tuned. Let us know what you think of our picks. Shout us out, share with your friends, do all that good stuff. Have a good night. Stay warm.